Hello, this is David, and in this video I'm going to be conducting a technical analysis of my 50 metres butterfly race from the South Yorkshire Masters Short Course Swimming Championships 2024. For those of you that watched the race near competition weekend will know that I came in with a time of 31.67 seconds. Not exactly my best 50 metres butterfly swim, being a second and a tenth above my all-time 50 metres fly short course personal best of 30.57. However, it wasn't my worst 50 metres fly performance of the year either. And therefore, in this video, I just want to take a look at what didn't quite go so well, what actually did go well, and where I have area to improve in this event. So if you would give this video a like, I would very much appreciate it. Remember to follow and subscribe for more swimming content, and to swim faster on limited training time, head on over to westcough.com. But otherwise, without any further ado, let's dive right in to today's technical analysis. So I get a decent reaction time off of the blocks, as you can see in a moment, where I'm in line with the rest of the swimmers in this heat. Need to get my head and rear leg up more so I get more distance through the air, and need to close my feet as I enter the water. I get 6 underwater leg kicks in, but need to initiate them from my chest as opposed to hips and legs. On the surfacing, my momentum needs to be going more forwards as opposed to upwards. And although my arm pull looks powerful, I just look completely uncoordinated down this first 25 with my legs. Turn was decent, where I spotted the wall reasonably well and got my hips underneath me relatively quickly. But down this second 25, my stroke looks completely uncoordinated. My leg kicks just not being well timed with my arm pulls, but do well to glide in at the finish instead of take that extra half stroke. So I believe the key talking point from that race for me was the evident lack of coordination between my arm pull and my legs. I was trying to perform the technique with 2 leg kicks to 1 arm pull. However, just that second leg kick almost looks forced and as though I'm trying to squeeze it in, where perhaps sticking to a single leg kick per arm pull might have felt a little bit more natural for me, and therefore enabled me to be a lot more coordinated with this flight race, and hence save precious energy, especially in a 50 metres fly race, and just be a lot more efficient with my stroke going down both lengths. So this is the key thing where I believe I lost most of my time versus my personal best. The coordination of my arm pulls and leg kicks was something that I got very well, or did very well in rather, at the back end of 2023 when I personal best at Swim England Masters Nationals and got 2 very close short course times thereafter, where 2024 hasn't been a great year for me with my 50 metres flight, where I just seem to have gotten nowhere near the level that I managed to achieve at the back end of 2023. I think that's largely down to focusing more on freestyle more as opposed to fly, where I just haven't done as much fly training, and therefore it's understandable that I have lost that coordination somewhat. Similarly, I believe that one thing that I've taken out of my gym routine, some lat pulls, pull-ups, movements to work the lats, have resulted in me losing a little bit of power on my 50 metres fly. I think this is pretty much the key gym exercise to be doing for a 50 metres fly, because it's just the movement is ultimately the movement that you use with your arms, and therefore I think it's absolute key, because the more power that you have in that movement, the quicker you can go with that 50 meters fly, just because the more power that you can put into each stroke. And therefore, having taken that out of my gym routine, I don't think has helped my 50 meters fly, because I just don't have as much strength in that movement as I did at the back end of 2023. So I feel as though that might be a reason for it. And if I want to get better at my 50 meters fly, then that is something that I've got to incorporate into my gym session. So that's my lat pull downs and my weighted pull-ups. So need to get those back in the gym session. Otherwise, looking at this race, I don't think it was quite as bad as the time made me feel as though it was. I got a decent reaction time off of the blocks. The dive was pretty decent. Got my head up reasonably high. Could have gotten that up higher, as well as my rear leg, and pushed off a little bit more with my front leg, so I just get more distance through the air and thereby a quicker time. However, that's something that I always need to work on with my dives. I thought generally the dive was a pretty good one for myself. The entry into the water, I need to close my legs more so that I'm streamlined in my entry, so I don't create masses of drag at my back end, slowing me down. And perhaps that was the reason why my underwaters after my dive looked so laboured, just because I lost so much speed in not closing up my legs and gaining that streamline as I entered into the water. But another reason for it might be because you could see that I was initiating the underwater leg kick from my hips and knees as opposed to from my chest, where you really want undulation of the entire body to get as much power as you can when completing your underwater fly leg kicks. So something that I've been working on and trying to get better at. I think I'm getting there with it in my training, how it should feel. However, evidently it's still not particularly consistent, where I didn't do it particularly well in this race. Moving on to the surfacing, it was okay. It wasn't too bad. I know I said that I need more forward momentum from the surfacing as opposed to an upwards momentum, but it wasn't all that bad, being honest. Yes, I can improve it more, but it wasn't as clunky as it has been for me in other 50 meters fly races. But as always, you want to be keeping your momentum going forward in fly, as opposed to spending your energy getting high out of the water. You instead want to be using that energy to drive you down the length, essentially. We've mentioned the clunkiness of my stroke, and the turn was relatively decent. I think given how the rest of my swim went, it's quite easy to always say, you know, it was a turn that was wrong. But I think in comparison to other 50 fly races, especially the race that I did at Masters Nationals, this turn was a lot better than that I performed 2 weeks ago at Masters Nationals. I spotted the wall reasonably well, didn't need to take an extra half stroke. Yes, I probably wanted a little bit more distance between myself and the wall, so I was touching the wall right on the final reach. However, you can't always time it that well, so it was reasonably well timed and better timed than I had done at Masters Nationals. Got my knees, hips underneath me and rotated through the water reasonably quickly, and got my arm over nice and quickly as well. So I think that the turn was actually relatively decent. Underwaters here were a little bit less clunky than when undertaking those first underwaters off of the dive. However, because I'm starting to fatigue and it's difficult to get as much power off of the wall as it is from a dive, naturally I don't travel as far underwater or put as many leg kicks in, but nonetheless, nothing too out the ordinary here. And then coming into the finish, I do reasonably well to spot the wall. And one mistake I seem to always make on a 15 metres fly is taking an extra half stroke to finish up, whether it be at the wall for the turn or when coming into the finish. However, I did well here to maintain my discipline, and instead of taking that extra half stroke, gliding into the finish. So I will have saved some time there in comparison to other 50 metres fly races. But overall, not a race that I'm terribly happy with. Naturally, the biggest component of the race went wrong, and that was my stroke. Because it's you're swimming, that's the largest portion of the swim, and therefore that's the thing to get right, essentially. If that goes wrong, then it's pretty much guaranteed that I'm not going to be in with a time that challenges what I have done before. So a little bit frustrated with that. Naturally, I was incredibly tired from moving that weekend and putting a load of boxes into vans and into my new house. So there was a reason for that. I'm pretty understanding as to why that I was so tired going into that event and why my races throughout the entire weekend didn't quite go so well. So naturally, that was going to be a factor in this race. And otherwise, in light of that fact and of how tired I was, I'm just really glad as to how well I got the other components of my race, where I kept my discipline really well on those technical aspects and held on for a decent swim, because without those, it probably would have been a lot worse and constituted my worst 50 metres fly swim of 2024. But I didn't, and I think that is the positive to take away from this race. But otherwise, that finishes off today's technical analysis. I've been David Westcough. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.
For more swimming content, follow and subscribe. To swim faster on limited training time, head to westcough.com. Otherwise, see you in the next episode.